You know, it's hard to get excited by the solemnity of the Most Blessed Trinity. I mean, it's easy to get excited by Christmas and it's easy to get excited by Easter. We can sort of relate to those feasts. We know what it's like to celebrate a birth, to grieve a death and to hope for eternal life. But the doctrine of the Trinity isn't something we can relate to, at least not easily. The doctrine of the Trinity tells us that God has revealed to us that God isn't infinite lowliness, but infinite love, infinite relationship, and infinite self-giving. The one divine nature exists fully and simultaneously in three divine persons, Father, Son, and Spirit. Perhaps, if we're lucky, we can catch a glimpse of how wonderful this doctrine is. But even then, it seems so abstract. I think most of us leave the Trinity to the theologians in the belief that it's mostly impractical for everyday life. That's a false impression, however. The Blessed Trinity is the most practical of all Christian beliefs because it shows us the true meaning of our life. We're created in God's image, and God's essential nature, his very essence of God's being, is self-forgetful love, a harmonious relationship in which the three divine persons know each other fully and intimately and share their lives with each other totally and utterly. God's eternal, dynamic happiness flows from that communion of life and love. And if that's true for God, then it must also be true for us, because we're created in God's image and likeness. So our happiness flows from sharing our lives completely, totally, and utterly in relationships of love with others, using our God-given gifts, our time, our talents, and our treasures to build up in love those we share our lives with. That's what we're created to do and to be, and it's only by imitating the inner life of the Trinity that we can hope to find happiness in our own lives. You see, the more our lives mirror the life of the Trinity, the more we discover the true meaning of our life. This beautiful truth of our faith is the key to understanding the Church's teaching on human sexuality. If you were to believe what modern society thinks the Church teaches about sexuality, you'd think that we Catholics believe it's something to look down on, or we're afraid of it, or we consider it dirty or sinful. But nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, it's modern culture that belittles and debases and cheapens human sexuality. Our culture has turned it into a product, a commodity to be traded. It's used to sell music, movies, and even mouthwash. In the eyes of our culture, sexuality is a sport or a game with no ultimate or transcendent meaning. We're encouraged to give in to our urges and every instinct, as if we're no different from animals. This degraded and degrading view is our culture's view and not the Church's. Human sexuality, as God designed it, is one of the most beautiful ways that we human beings can mirror the Blessed Trinity. It's one of the most concrete ways we discover the truth that we are made in the image and likeness of God, of the Blessed Trinity. When a husband and a wife commit themselves to each other for life, mind, body, and soul, they're fulfilling their vocation to mirror that kind of life and love we find in the heart of the Trinity. And when their love finds physical expression, if God wills it, it can create a new life itself. The husband, wife, and their child together form a community of love. This is what it means to mirror the life of the Trinity, and it's the true meaning of human sexuality. Of course, original sin and our selfishness have obscured that meaning. That's why it's so easy to misinterpret or to abuse it, whether through promiscuity, infidelity, abortion, pornography, or in the myriad other ways. These things are not sins because the Church is prudish or has an overly negative view. They're sins because they obscure the truth that we are made in God's image and likeness, and in our personal relationships, we're meant to mirror the life of the Trinity. And the more intimate those relationships, the closer the mirroring. The life of the Trinity really is the key to unlocking the meaning of human life and relationships. There's an old proverb that goes, "Knowledge is power." And more recently, Spider-Man said, "With great power comes great responsibility." As Christians, we've been privileged to receive the most precious knowledge of all, that the meaning of life is to mirror the life of the Blessed Trinity through self-forgetful love. This knowledge gives us great power, and with that comes great responsibility. We have the power to face every situation with confidence and eagerness, even in situations of suffering and hardship. We know that during life's good times, as well as during the bad times, our job remains the same: to mirror the life of the Trinity by giving ourselves and building up our neighbours. We can always do that because of what Jesus tells us: "Behold, I am with you always until the end of time." That's why we're called the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Being mirrors of the Trinity means that we share a divine light in the darkness of this world, and it's our responsibility to share it. This week, let's thank God for revealing to us the wonderful knowledge of the Trinity and how we are made in God's image and likeness, called to be mirrors of the Trinity. Let's also promise Him to do our best to use well the great power this knowledge gives us. Finally, let's ask God to help us fulfill our responsibility as mirrors of the Trinity's divine life better and better, starting today.